flesh-eating bacteria, a snowy plane crash, and a volcano eruption. These are 10 people who survived the impossible, part 2. Number 10, flesh-eating bacteria. Jake Finbauer cut his lip on a basketball hoop one night during a basketball game in 2006. What he didn't know was on the hoop was strep A bacteria, the cause of a horrible disease called necrotizing fasciitis. The disease is a flesh-eating bacteria that patients have a 50-50 chance of surviving. On Jake's 9th day in the hospital, his condition changed from worse to better, continuing to improve. A staggering 8 weeks later, he was sent home. Doctors were absolutely shocked at his incredibly fast recovery, and he quickly became an international phenomenon. Number 9, Andes Mountain Plane Crash. An Uruguayan rugby team and their friends and families were en route to Chile for an important match when disaster struck. The plane hit a mountain in the Andes, killing 12 people in the crash, leaving 33 alive. The harsh and cold conditions of the mountains were deemed unsurvivable, causing the search party to call off their search after just 8 days. But the survivors were still alive and were forced to eat the dead to survive. Before the survivors were rescued in December of that year, 14 had already died, leaving just 16 survivors left. While the numbers might make it look like they're uncommon, plane crashes seem to be a lot more common than perceived. I think I fear planes now. Number 8, trapped in volcano blasts. In 1902, a volcano erupted named Mount Pelée. It was a devastating natural disaster that ended up killing 30,000 innocent lives. It wasn't lava that killed everyone like in Pompeii. The eruption actually sent a cloud of superheated gas and dust, burning everyone alive. Ludger Silbaris was stuck in his prison cell when the volcano combusted, leaving him to suffer and die with no way out of the cell. But thanks to his quick thinking, he managed to survive by removing his clothes, peeing on them, and stuffing them in the cracks of his cell to keep his cell from letting more gas and dust get in. Only a handful of people survived, but Ludger was easily the biggest miracle of the event, being trapped with nowhere to go and all. After the incident, he was pardoned of his charges and went on to tour with a circus. If you think these were impossible, things are about to get crazier. Keep watching to see what's next. Number 7, stuck under ice river. May of 2000 was an eventful time for Dr. Anna Beckenholm. This isn't the first item on this list that has to do with cold, but this sounds the most painful. While skiing, Anna fell right into a frozen river, breaking right under the ice. Unable to find her entry point, she quickly became trapped under the icy surface, only being able to break through a very small air pocket she found. She attempted to escape for 40 minutes, suffering from hypothermia the entire time. It took 40 more for her friends to rescue her. Her vital signs were so low that she was considered clinically dead, dropping her body temperature from 93 degrees Fahrenheit all the way down to 57. She was only able to be saved thanks to doctors pumping her blood through a machine that warmed it up and entered it back into her. The fact that she didn't die while on the way to the hospital is a miracle. Some would say it's clinically impossible. Number 6, stranded in the desert. Known as one of the most dangerous athletic events on the planet, the Marathon des Sables is a 6-day, 155-mile run through the infamous Sahara Desert. In 1994, Mauro Prosperi was caught in a deadly sandstorm that lasted a whole 8 hours. He was forced to take shelter for the night to survive. When he awoke the next morning, he realized he had no idea where to go or how to get home after being thrown off track. He was forced to eat bats and drink their blood when he found an abandoned Muslim shrine to shelter in. After 3 days of hopelessness, he attempted to kill himself by slitting his wrists, but due to the extreme heat conditions and dehydration, his blood was too thick to drain from his body. On his 9th day of struggle, he found shepherds that came to his rescue. Of the past list of experiences made you think that cold was bad, this one makes us scared of the heat. Number 5, 45 days without food. When a snowstorm ravaged the Canadian wilderness of February 4th, 1963, it caused a horrible plane crash that would change Helen Claiborne's life forever. Helen wanted to travel to Seattle from Fairbanks and decided to fly with amateur pilot Ralph Flores in order to save some money. This decision ended up being a near-fatal one when they were hit with a snowstorm that landed them in the Canadian wilderness. They were left with the only equipment of matches, sardines, tuna, fruit cocktail, and some vitamins. They ran out of food in merely 1 week and were forced to eat snow and drink water for every meal. Thanks to them both being a tad overweight, they were able to survive these conditions for a whole 45 days until help arrived. The average human can only survive 8 to 21 days without food. The absolute will and determination found in Helen and Ralph is something to be truly admired. I think we can all strive to be as strong as these two were. Number 4, scary hang gliding. US tourist Chris Kursky decided to have some fun hang gliding while on vacation in Switzerland in November 2018, but things didn't go as planned. It was all good and fun until Chris realized that pilot had not strapped him in correctly, and he was hanging free from safety restraints. He held on for dear life, realizing that if he let go, he would fall to his death. He hung for an entire 3 minutes before they landed to safety. Thankfully, the pilot managed to hold on to Chris to help him keep up, but that was not all good. Upon crash landing on the ground, Chris broke his wrist and later realized he tore his bicep from holding the bar for so long. In an interview with Daily Mail, Chris said this about the experience. "I remember looking down and thinking, this is it. I was losing grip with my right hand, which is holding onto a strap on the pilot's right shoulder. He was trying to make a beeline to the landing field, knowing what the situation would bring. Starting out, things get even scarier. Keep watching until the end." Number 3. 2 nuclear bombs. Nuclear energy is some of the most dangerous and fatal energy known to mankind. Sadly, we've used it to incredibly destructive ends, killing many, except this man. When the bomb that was known as Little Boy was dropped in Hiroshima, it took the lives of over 140,000 innocents, except for Tsutomu Yamaguchi, who managed to survive the devastating blast while on a business trip in the city. Tsutomu isn't even sure how he survived the blast. All he remembers is waking up as if he had fainted but was horribly burned and his eardrums had burst. After the trauma-inducing incident, he hopped right onto a train to his hometown of Nagasaki to see his wife and kid. Little did he know that 3 days later, while he was coincidentally recalling the event to his coworkers, a second bomb called Fat Man would go off. He would go on to somehow survive this blast as well, along with his wife and son also surviving. He suffered from extreme radiation poisoning, but eventually recovered and lived until 2010. Tsutomu is quite literally one of the luckiest men to have ever lived. Number 2. 7 Death Man. While our last person on the list may be one of the luckiest men alive, the man on this next list was dubbed the unluckiest man alive. Frano Salak is a man who's been thrown into 7 near-death experiences. He was riding a train that derailed into a river and 17 people died. A plane he was riding on's door flew off and 19 people were sucked out of the plane before he landed in a haystack. A bus he was riding on drove into a river. His car caught fire and exploded twice. He was hit by a bus and finally drove his car off a 300-foot drop only to jump out at the last possible second. I think it's safe to say that no one has gone through what Frano has, but his luck began to turn around when he actually won the lottery. He lived to be 87 years old, dying of old age in the year 2016. Frano must have a great guardian angel, because to live through all of those experiences and live as long of a life as he did is just crazy. Number 1. Cut in half. Truman Duncan is a man that should be dead. Not that we're saying he deserves it, but it's actually unbelievable with the experience he lived through. It's near impossible to survive being cut in half, or so you may think. Truman Duncan was working at his railroad job in 2006 when he slipped, fell, and was run over by an oncoming locomotive. He states that he attempted to outrun the vehicle, but to no avail. Duncan was dragged under the train for 75 feet before it was able to come to a stop. But by then, Truman was already completely severed in half. It was at this moment Truman knew he needed unbelievable willpower in order to survive, stating, "If I knew I'd just lay there and lay there, eventually I was gonna die. But if I stayed away, made sure I got help, then there was a possibility that I would live. And that's when I realized I had a phone in my hip." Duncan went on to call 911 for himself and clung to thoughts of his wife, daughter, and son to keep himself going amidst unbearable pain. Enjoyed the video? Now watch this one.